The door to the dorm room stood closed. Caleb knocked, the sound echoing slightly in the quiet afternoon hallway of the arts building. He waited. Nothing. He knocked again, harder this time, a flicker of impatience rising within him. After what felt like an eternity, the lock clicked and the door swung inward. An expanse of warm, tan skin filled his vision. Liam stood there, shirtless, a pair of low-slung jeans hanging precariously on his hips. A defined set of abdominal muscles rippled as he leaned against the doorframe, his body a study in lean, powerful lines. His complexion was a deep, even bronze, and his features were sharp, possessing a raw, untamed attractiveness. Caleb had heard he came from somewhere rural out in the sticks. He noted the lingering sleepiness in Liam's eyes and commented that it was already 5 in the afternoon, asking if he'd been sleeping all day. Liam, one hand propped on the door, displayed an arm where the veins traced elegant patterns over solid muscle. He looked down at Caleb, the height difference creating an immediate sense of pressure. He explained that he had pulled an all-nighter and questioned if he wasn't allowed to sleep now. Caleb swallowed, a brief wave of regret washing over him for coming. He reminded Liam that he had sent a message 2 days prior, confirming he would be coming this afternoon. He asked why Liam would sleep with the door locked, accusing him of deliberately making him wait. Liam's mouth twisted in a smirk of irritation. He informed Caleb that the door had never been locked and he had no idea where Caleb got that idea. Caleb froze for a second, processing the new information. He asked if Liam was serious. Liam just grunted in affirmation, making it clear that Caleb's own foolishness was to blame. The anger Caleb had been nursing vanished instantly, replaced by a profound sense of embarrassment. He quickly changed the subject, suggesting they go inside. Caleb and Liam were roommates. When Caleb had been the odd man out in the art department housing lottery, he'd enjoyed a single room for his entire freshman year. Then, at the start of sophomore year, Liam had moved in. The rumor was that he'd had a falling out with his previous roommate, though the specific reason was a mystery. Caleb had initially worried Liam might have some hidden flaw, like being messy, having a bad temper, or a fondness for loud, late-night movies. But Liam had none of those issues. Puzzled, Caleb had sought out the former roommate, a pale, slender guy who had given him a strange, knowing smile. He had confessed his feelings for Liam, he'd explained, only to find out Liam was intensely uncomfortable with it. The guy had moved off campus immediately. Caleb's heart had sunk at the news. He'd kept his distance until now, when this new art project forced his hand. He needed a model, and of all the well-built men he knew, Liam was undeniably in a class of his own. The room was dark, the blackout curtains drawn tight against the afternoon sun. With a click, Liam flicked on the light switch. The dorm was as immaculate as ever. Caleb's old bed was still there, untouched. Liam's desk was the only spot with any clutter, covered in discarded sketches and architectural models. Liam grabbed a bottle of water from his desk, tilted his head back, and took a long drink, his throat moving with the motion. Caleb found himself swallowing again, the feeling that this was a terrible idea growing stronger. But it was too late to back out now. He silently set up his easel and told Liam he could just sit on the floor across from him. Liam raised an eyebrow, a playful glint in his eye as he asked if Caleb meant directly on the floor. Caleb stood up, pulled the mattress pad from his own bed, and spread it on the ground, asking if that was acceptable. Liam nodded in assent. He settled onto the pad, leaning his back against the wall, crossing his arms, and closing his eyes again. Caleb frowned, asking what he was doing. Liam opened his eyes, their dark, narrow shape fixing on Caleb. He reasoned that since Caleb would be drawing for a long time, it was a good chance for him to catch up on sleep. Caleb conceded the point. He clutched his charcoal pencil, hesitating for a moment before stating that Liam's pants had to come off too. Liam paused, remarking that the requirements for this project were quite extensive. Caleb gripped his pencil tighter, thinking for a moment before replying that if Liam wasn't comfortable, he could find someone else. He added that for $150 an hour, there would be plenty of willing volunteers. Liam retorted that he never said he wouldn't do it. He stood up fluidly, his long, deft fingers moving to the button of his jeans. An unexpected warmth crept up Caleb's ears, and he quickly dropped his gaze to the blank paper on his easel. He heard the soft rustle of denim. After staring at the paper for a few seconds, his curiosity won. He glanced up. Liam was bent over, pulling his ankles free from the pant legs, leaving him in nothing but a pair of black boxer briefs. Through the thin fabric, his form was impressive. Despite having seen countless nude models in class, Caleb felt an unfamiliar flush of shyness. Liam tossed the jeans onto his chair and announced that he was ready. Caleb swallowed hard and said that he needed him to take off the last piece as well. Liam's movements ceased. His eyes, holding an unreadable expression, locked onto Caleb. He asked if Caleb was just trying to take advantage of him. Caleb countered that if the price was too low, he could find dozens of models for what Liam was implying he was worth. Liam was unfazed, retorting that none of them combined would be as good-looking as him. Caleb rolled his eyes at the sheer confidence, simply asking if he was going to do it or not, because he could find someone else. Liam took a deep breath, his jaw tight, and ground out the single word, Toa. He seemed genuinely angry now, yanking off the underwear with a quick, aggressive motion. The sudden reveal left Caleb momentarily stunned. Liam's cool voice cut through the silence, observing that Caleb's eyes were practically glued to him. Caleb snapped back to reality, the heat rising in his face. He stammered that he was just a bit surprised. Liam retrieved a clean sheet from his wardrobe and spread it over the mattress pad. He asked what exactly was so surprising. Caleb struggled to control his gaze, but his eyes kept wandering, from Liam's chiseled abs to his powerful thighs, and then inevitably lower. Now, without any obstruction, the view was even more pronounced. His train of thought faltered. He finally managed to say he was surprised Liam seemed so inexperienced, given his appearance. A faint, humorless smile touched Liam's lips. It was unsettling. He asked if Caleb's parents had ever disciplined him when he was a child. Caleb wisely shut his mouth. Liam, his face a dark mask of annoyance, sat back against the wall and closed his eyes to feign sleep. Caleb picked up his pencil and, after a moment's hesitation, began to sketch. Liam fell asleep quickly, his exhaustion apparent. His breathing was soft and even, his chest rising and falling in a gentle rhythm. Caleb put on his headphones, listening to a lecture as he worked. Sometime later, Liam's head slumped forward and his arm shifted, covering the muscles Caleb was trying to capture. Caleb had to get up and gently move the arm back into place. As he did, his fingers brushed against Liam's abdomen. The muscle was firm, yet supple to the touch. Liam had been a campus sensation since his first week, a frequent feature on the university's anonymous confession pages. His appeal was universal, attracting admiration from both men and women. He wasn't the polished, boy band type of handsome that was currently popular. His was a more primal appeal, the kind of rugged good looks one might associate with a man raised on horseback, high cheekbones, deep-set eyes, and a sharp, stoic demeanor that hinted at a capacity for hard work. Caleb bit his lip, studying Liam's sleeping face. He looked deeply asleep. Emboldened, Caleb reached out and poked one of the abdominal muscles with his index finger. The sensation was surprisingly pleasant. One finger became 2, then 3, until both of his hands were exploring the sculpted terrain of Liam's torso. His eyes strayed downward again, and he quickly looked away as if burned. Suddenly, a strong hand clamped around his wrist. The emo song in his headphones faded into the background as Liam's voice, clear and sharp, cut through the quiet. He asked if Caleb was some kind of pervert. Caleb's heart hammered against his ribs. He felt as if he might die on the spot. He held his breath. Liam used his other hand to pull the headphones off Caleb's ears. The sound of rain outside filled the room. Leaning against the wall, Liam watched him with a sly, knowing look, asking if Caleb had a crush on him. Caleb's heart was beating a frantic rhythm, faster than the rain drumming against the window pane. He shook his head frantically, denying it was possible. He was straight, he insisted. Liam stared at him, his grip on Caleb's wrist slowly loosening before he rested his hand on his knee. He questioned whether a straight guy would touch another man's stomach like that. Feigning composure, Caleb explained that it was normal for art students. To prove his point, he deliberately squeezed Liam's abs again, trying to look as nonchalant as possible, even offering a clinical assessment of the excellent muscle tone. Liam suddenly slapped his hand away, stating that while he might also be straight, he wouldn't let another straight guy touch him in such a way. Caught off guard, Caleb's hand fell, inadvertently brushing against something hard and unyielding. The color drained from Caleb's face. Liam's expression changed too. Remembering Liam's confident declaration of being straight just moments before, Caleb let out a slow hiss. He looked down, then back at Liam's face, asking Riley if he was on some kind of hormone treatment. Liam said nothing, just glared at him with a dark, simmering intensity. A chill went down Caleb's spine, but he pushed back defiantly, demanding to know why Liam was staring at him. He retorted that it wasn't his fault Liam couldn't control his own body. A bitter laugh seemed to escape Liam. His lips curled slightly. Without a word, he reached out and grabbed the back of Caleb's neck, pulling him forward like a stray cat. The distance between them vanished, their breaths mingling in the small space. Just as Caleb was about to ask what he was doing, Liam bit down hard on his cheek. His nose was firm, his teeth sharp. The pain was so intense it brought tears to Caleb's eyes. He yelped, asking if Liam was part dog. Liam threatened in a low, deliberate voice that next time Caleb's mouth got him into trouble, it wouldn't be just a bite on the face. Regret washed over Caleb. He scrambled back to his easel, announcing that they were done for the day and he was leaving. Liam arched an eyebrow, asking if he wasn't going to draw anymore. Caleb hesitated, retorting that Liam surely didn't want him to capture his current state on paper. Liam was silent. Without bothering to get dressed, he walked straight into the bathroom. Caleb hastily packed his supplies and fled. Back in his own apartment building, he finally let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The phantom sensation of the bite lingered on his cheek. He checked it in the mirror. The teeth marks were surprisingly clear. That guy really was part dog. He collapsed onto his sofa and pulled out his phone, messaging the most popular guy in the math department. The guy was handsome and rumored to be a martial artist since childhood, with a great physique to match. They were both in the student government and had exchanged contacts before, but had never spoken. Caleb cautiously typed a message asking if he was there. The reply was instantaneous. No confessions, no QR codes for surveys. Caleb was taken aback but replied that he needed a favor. The guy asked him to specify what kind of favor. Caleb told him he needed him to be a life model. The response was that he was busy. Caleb threw out the bait. $500 for an hour. A new message appeared. Does it involve taking off clothes? Caleb was honest. Yes, everything. The guy replied that sacrificing for art wasn't out of the question, but Caleb understood. He offered to add another $300. Deal, came the reply, followed by a message telling his new boss to contact him anytime. He'd be available on demand. Caleb stared at the chat, marveling at the drastic shift in attitude. The math student's name was Cole. When they met, Caleb discovered the man was an incessant, boisterous talker. Cole demanded Caleb admit that he'd been captivated by his perfect body from the start, gesturing to his own chest and abs. He boasted that if he weren't a man of principle, his good looks would put every male escort in the city out of business. Caleb's mouth twitched, but he decided it was best to keep his opinions to himself. Despite his non-stop chatter, Cole was professional. The work went smoothly, and they finished within a week. After Caleb transferred the money, Cole cheerfully told him to call him again if he ever needed a model, reiterating that he was always available. Caleb couldn't help but smile. On Saturday afternoon, there was a student government social. Arriving at the bar, Caleb spotted Liam at the counter and immediately remembered he was also on the council. He instantly regretted coming and turned to leave, but he was stopped after only 2 steps. Liam, wearing a simple black t-shirt, frowned at him, asking why he was running. Caleb, feigning calm, claimed he wasn't running. He just remembered he left the water on at home. Liam narrowed his eyes, stating that he was lying. Defeated, Caleb went back and ordered a drink, with Liam taking the seat next to him. Liam seemed to want to say something but hesitated, even after Caleb's drink arrived. Caleb prompted him to just say what was on his mind. Liam tapped his fingers on the glass and asked when Caleb was planning to finish the rest of the sketch. Caleb, who had just taken a sip of his drink, sputtered, spraying it across the bar. Liam looked at him, confused, and asked what was wrong. Caleb shook his head vigorously, insisting it was nothing. Unconvinced, Liam handed him a napkin. Caleb wiped his mouth, cleared his throat, and after a moment, said that he didn't need to finish it. Liam's brow furrowed as he asked what he meant. Caleb's mind raced, and he blurted out that the professor had changed the assignment. Liam seemed taken aback. A familiar voice called out Caleb's name from behind. Caleb froze, feeling stiffer than the ice in his glass. Liam glanced at him, his gaze cool. Cole slid into the seat on Caleb's other side, poking him in the shoulder and asking why he was ignoring him. Caleb managed a stiff, "Oh, I didn't hear you." Cole slapped him on the back, not buying it for a second. Caleb forced a laugh. Cole ordered a drink, then asked Caleb if he could send him a photo of the finished sketch. Caleb didn't dare move. Liam, swirling his glass, asked what sketch. Caleb stared intently at the ice cubes in his drink, barely daring to breathe. Cole blithely explained that it was for Caleb's assignment, the life drawing. Liam sounded incredulous as he asked if Caleb had hired him. Cole nodded, adding that he wouldn't have agreed if the pay wasn't so good. He finally seemed to notice the tense atmosphere, asking why Caleb was so quiet. The temperature around Liam seemed to drop several degrees. Caleb kept his eyes fixed on his glass, his breathing shallow. He cursed Cole's big mouth. Cole looked from Caleb to Liam, asking if Caleb had gone mute. Liam replied that it was possible. He tightened his grip on his glass, asking Cole how much Caleb had paid him. $800, Cole said, adding with a sigh that his looks and body were easily worth that much an hour. Liam didn't speak. He drained his glass in one go, ice and all, and crunched down on the last cube. The sound grated on Caleb's nerves. A few seconds later, Liam slammed the empty glass on the counter, grabbed Caleb's arm, and dragged him outside. Caleb didn't resist. He knew he was in the wrong. He hadn't even told Liam he'd replaced him, too scared to have that conversation. He'd figured putting it off was the best strategy. Liam pulled him into a dark alley near the bar, illuminated only by a few dim streetlights. He shoved Caleb against the brick wall. Liam paced back and forth in front of him, hands on his hips, his breathing heavy. He looked furious. Caleb trembled, trying to appease him by pointing out that his rate was higher than Cole's. Liam let out a cold laugh, asking if he was supposed to be grateful. Caleb waved his hands frantically, saying that wouldn't be necessary. Liam's jaw tightened. He demanded to know why Caleb had found someone else. The real reason, that Caleb couldn't control himself around Liam and was terrified of disgusting him, was unspeakable. So he invented a lie. Cole was cheaper and he'd had a fight with his mother, so his allowance was cut. Liam took 2 deep breaths. He told Caleb that if he had just said that, he would have done it for free. Caleb stared at him, shocked, asking if he was crazy. Liam just looked at him. He seemed to be past the point of anger, his jaw clenched and his lips a thin line. Caleb braced himself, saying that Liam could hit him, but not in the face. When Liam's hand came towards him, Caleb squeezed his eyes shut, pressing himself against the wall. But instead of a fist, fingers gripped his chin. As he trembled, a sharp pain erupted on his lips. His eyes flew open. Liam's face was inches away, his teeth biting down hard on Caleb's upper lip, the sharp point of a canine tooth pressing into the soft flesh. His own lower lip was inside Caleb's mouth. The taste of alcohol and lemon filled his senses. His mind went blank. He thought they were both straight. Who hits someone by kissing them? It was absurd. When Liam finally let go, Caleb's head was spinning. He looked at Liam, whose normally pale lips were now a deep, swollen red. Caleb clenched his fists, managing to say that this was going too far. He was a straight man after all. At this, Liam didn't argue. Instead, he looked Caleb up and down and said with a sneer that if Caleb was straight, then pigs could fly. Caleb's eyes widened, indignant at the insult. Liam scoffed, asking where this indignation was when Caleb was drunkenly kissing him and tearing at his clothes. The words hit Caleb like a lightning bolt, leaving him speechless. He stared into Liam's dark, clear eyes, utterly baffled. He stammered, asking if that wasn't just a dream. Liam raised an eyebrow slightly, observing that Caleb's lack of any reaction now made sense if he thought it was all a dream. 3 months into being roommates, Caleb had gone out with some old high school friends. He'd had too much to drink. He woke up the next morning alone in the dorm room. He remembered a vivid dream from the night before. He had stumbled into the room, reeking of alcohol. Liam had been there, frowning, asking about the smell. In the dream, Caleb had just giggled, thrown himself at Liam, and kissed him. Liam had looked shocked, grabbing his shoulders to push him away, asking if he was insane. But, believing it was a dream, Caleb had petulantly mumbled that Liam had to listen to him, or he would sell him off to a nightclub. Liam had stared at him, daring him to say it again. His intensity would have been terrifying if Caleb were sober, but he wasn't. So he'd repeated the threat, only to have his cheeks squeezed hard by Liam, silencing him. He had glared in fury, and when he saw an opening, he bit Liam's finger. Then he'd grabbed Liam's collar and kissed him again, fiercely, declaring that he was the boss and Liam had to obey. Liam, who had just gotten over a fever, was too weak to resist much as Caleb pushed him onto the bed. kissing him and fumbling with his clothes, his hands exploring Liam's chest and stomach. He told himself it was just normal guy stuff. The next day, he'd woken up believing it was all a dream, but a dream that revealed his own hidden desires. That afternoon, after hearing from the ex-roommate that Liam was supposedly homophobic, he had moved out immediately. Caleb hesitated. He asked why Liam hadn't said something sooner. Liam's lips curled into a cold smile. He asked if Caleb had ever given him a chance to. Caleb touched his nose, feeling a pang of guilt. That very afternoon, he had packed his things. Liam had messaged him, asking why he left. In a fit of what felt like heartbroken bravado, Caleb had replied, "None of your business." Liam had typed for a long time before sending back just 2 words, "You're something else." The anger in that short message had been palpable. Caleb hadn't replied. "I'm sorry," Caleb said, his gaze fixed on his shoes. He mumbled that he thought it was a dream. The idea of a roommate suddenly getting drunk and groping you was a huge shock for any straight guy. He realized it was no different from sexual harassment. A wave of shame and guilt washed over him. He told Liam he had $30,000 in his bank account, enough to cover his university expenses. Liam raised an eyebrow, asking what he meant. Caleb whispered that it was compensation. Liam's tone was light, remarking that Caleb was as generous as the rumors said. Then his tone shifted. 30,000 wasn't enough. Caleb gritted his teeth, adding that he had another 4,000 in his digital wallet. Liam pulled out his phone, asking if he wanted to transfer it now. Caleb nodded, grimly sending his entire fortune over. As the transaction completed, Liam seemed to remember something. He asked if Caleb would have any money left to hire models. Caleb shook his head. Liam smiled, a satisfied curl of his lips, and said it served him right. He then asked if Caleb had enough to live on for the rest of the month. Caleb held up 3 fingers, $300. Liam told him that if he ran short, he could come ask him for more. Caleb's eyes lit up. He asked if Liam would really give it to him. Liam tapped his phone case, saying it would depend on his behavior. Caleb thought 300 would last him a while, but then his favorite online game released a new legendary skin for his main champion. He had to have it. $10 a pull, 100 for 10. It usually took 400 or 500 to get it. Halfway through, he stared at his empty balance and fell into a deep contemplation. He called Liam. It rang and rang with no answer. Frustrated, he called again and again. Nothing. Annoyed, he jumped on his electric scooter and zipped back to the dorm. He tried the handle. It was locked. He resorted to banging on the door, yelling for Liam to wake up, asking how he could possibly be asleep when the sun was so high. After nearly 5 minutes, the door opened. Liam looked terrifying, his eyes heavy-lidded and dark, still clouded with sleep. Caleb faltered for a second, asking if he was still not awake. It was noon. Liam's voice was raspy. He said he'd only been asleep for 2 hours. Caleb fell silent, sheepishly holding up his phone and explaining that he wanted to try for the skin. Liam transferred him $1,000 without a word. Caleb zipped back, spent another 300 to finally get the skin, and had 700 left. Once a man has money, his mind starts to wander. When his best friend, Sam, messaged him about going to a club, his mind wandered even further. He changed his clothes, put on his earring, bracelet, and necklace, and transformed from his earlier disheveled state. He and Sam had been friends since middle school, partners in crime through bad hair dye jobs and school punishments. At the club, they got a private room and ordered several bottles. Then Sam clapped his hands and called in a few male hosts. They were all tall, handsome, and came in a variety of types. Cool and stoic, delicate and beautiful, and the fresh-faced campus heartthrob. Sam liked them all, so they kept 4. The 4 handsome men surrounded them, their voices smooth and their words sweet. One of them, a guy with dark skin, handed Caleb a drink, urging him to have another. Caleb, feeling like he was floating, drank it without a second thought. They finished the first round of drinks quickly and ordered more. By the end of it, Caleb was pleasantly drunk. The dark-skinned host sat next to him and asked if he'd ever been in a relationship. Caleb just stared at him blankly. The host must have misinterpreted the look because he leaned in to kiss him. Caleb shoved him away, saying he didn't want him. The host, taken aback, asked who he did want. Want. An image of Liam's face floated into his mind. Caleb chastised himself. After all this time, he was still hung up on him. The guy said he was straight. You can't wait for a ship at an airport. He waved his hand, telling the host to leave. He then morosely picked up his glass and downed it. When the night was over, a waiter brought the bill. Caleb glanced at it. $4,000. The number sobered him up instantly. He rubbed his nose and pointed at Sam, saying he would pay. Sam, who had been lounging on the sofa eating a pear, sat up, his eyes hazy. He asked what Caleb was talking about. Caleb went over and shook him, telling him to wake up and pay the bill. Sam wrinkled his nose, whining that he had no money. Caleb stared at him. Sam explained that his dad had frozen his cards and he only had $200 on him. A feeling of dread crept over Caleb. He looked at Sam and said, slowly and clearly, I only have $700. They both looked up at the waiter, who was holding the bill and watching them with a strained smile. Sam mumbled, asking if they could pay in installments. The waiter's smile didn't waver as he said no. In this dire situation, their only option was to call for backup. Caleb squatted in a corner, fiddling with his phone for a long time before finally steeling himself and calling Liam. It was only 11 o'clock. Liam was probably working on his designs. He picked up quickly. What is it? Caleb bit his lip and asked if he could borrow $40,000. Liam agreed but asked what he needed it for. Caleb cleared his throat and said he was out with a friend. Liam asked where they were. Caleb lied, saying they were at the mall buying clothes. Liam said okay, then added which mall. I'll come pay. The man was impossible. Seeing the waiter's increasingly unfriendly stare, Caleb coughed and confessed that he was at the club in the city center. There was a 2-second silence on Liam's end, followed by a cold laugh. Liam remarked that Caleb was a terrible liar, but he arrived 20 minutes later, wearing a simple white t-shirt and shorts, looking effortlessly more handsome than any of the professional hosts. He paid the bill and the waiter left satisfied. Caleb cowered in the corner, not sure why he was so scared. He nudged Sam, telling him to protect him. Sam didn't say anything. He was staring straight ahead. Just as the waiter was about to leave the room, Sam shot up and called him back. The waiter returned with a smile, asking if there was anything else. Sam trotted over to Liam, pointed at him, and asked the waiter, "How much for this one? Can I book him for the whole night?" The waiter was stunned. Caleb buried his head in his hands. Liam ground his teeth. He walked over to Caleb and lifted him by the collar, asking if they had also booked hosts tonight. Caleb didn't dare answer. Sam ran over, explaining that they had booked 4, but that Liam was more handsome than all of them combined. Caleb closed his eyes in agony, trying to ignore Liam's icy glare. He looked at Sam, pleading with his eyes for him to stop. Sam was too drunk to notice. He just giggled and told Liam he was very handsome. Caleb slapped a hand over Sam's mouth, announcing that he was drunk and he was taking him to a hotel. He dragged Sam by the arm and gave Liam a weak, apologetic smile, thanking him for his help. As they were leaving, Liam crossed his arms and asked if he had any money. The question hit Caleb right where it hurt, leaving him speechless. There were plenty of taxis outside. Liam took the front seat while Caleb and Sam sat in the back. At the hotel, the receptionist looked from Caleb to the drunk Sam he was supporting, and finally to Liam and asked diplomatically, "One room?" The implication was bold. Caleb quickly said one double room would be fine, pointing at Liam and explaining he was going back to campus. The receptionist nodded. Liam interjected, telling her to add a suite. Caleb whipped his head around to look at him, asking who that was for. Liam, already paying, said simply, "Me." Caleb helped Sam into their room. As soon as Sam was on the bed, Caleb felt his own head spinning. He had just collapsed onto the other bed when his phone buzzed. It was a message from Liam. 8016. Just his room number. Nothing else. Caleb stubbornly ignored it. 3 minutes later, he got up. What if it was something important? He would just take a quick look. The door to 8016 was slightly ajar. Seeing that crack of light, Caleb's heart sank. It was like Liam knew he would come. He pushed the door open, stepped inside, and closed it behind him. The suite was luxurious, with a living room and 2 bedrooms. A light was on in the main bedroom. He went in, but it was empty. The sound of running water came from the bathroom. The door was frosted glass, revealing only a blurred silhouette. What was this guy thinking? Was he trying to seduce him? After a couple of minutes, the water stopped. Liam emerged, a towel wrapped around his waist. For words came to Caleb's mind. A feast for the eyes. The shoulders, the legs, the waist. Liam picked up a bottle of water from the nightstand and took a drink. Caleb shook his head, trying to clear it of lustful thoughts. He asked, with as much aggression as he could muster, why Liam had called him here. Liam merely raised an eyebrow. He sat on the sofa and patted the spot next to him, saying simply, "Sit." Caleb hesitated for 2 seconds, then sat. Liam immediately grabbed his wrist. "How many did you hire tonight?" he asked. Caleb kept his face a blank mask, asking if he could choose not to answer. Liam's smile was anything but friendly. "What do you think?" he replied. Caleb held up 2 fingers. "2. Caleb." Liam's voice turned serious. He cupped Caleb's chin. "You are being very disobedient." Lying again. Caleb's eyes widened. He insisted he wasn't lying. "The bill was very detailed," Liam said. As he spoke, he leaned in, his body blocking the light. Caleb's lips felt a sudden warmth. His mind went fuzzy as he realized what was happening. Liam's lips were soft and hot, his tongue confidently pushing past Caleb's teeth. Tasted of mint toothpaste. Wasn't he supposed to be straight? Why was he kissing him again? His mind raced with a dozen chaotic thoughts until all that remained was the sensation of the kiss. Hot, soft, wet. When Liam pulled away, Caleb's face was hot enough to fry an egg. His lips tingled. He managed to ask what this all meant. Liam gave a slight, arrogant lift of his eyebrow. "Isn't it obvious?" "Obvious?" Caleb lunged, grabbing Liam by the neck. "You said you were straight," he demanded. Liam looked down at him. "You said you were straight first," he countered. "So I said I was too. But you were just out hiring male hosts. How straight can you be?" "Don't change the subject." Caleb twisted his arm. "Are you straight or are you gay?" Liam paused for 2 seconds. "What are screws like?" he asked. Caleb thought for a moment. Very bent. Yeah, Liam said calmly. I'm like that. Caleb stared, dumbfounded. But your old roommate said you were homophobic. I don't like him, Liam stated. It was just an excuse. The question that had plagued Caleb for so long was answered with such a simple, fabricated reason. It took him a moment to process. His eyes widened. So you mean, I like you, Liam said, capturing Caleb's chin again and pulling him into another kiss. I don't like him, he added, his voice muffled against Caleb's lips. Though Caleb and Sam often hired hosts, it was usually just for company, someone to drink and sing with and to admire. Caleb had never actually been in a relationship. His first kiss had been with Liam, though he'd been too drunk to remember it. Tonight was making up for it. Midway through the kiss, his hands started to wander on their own, from Liam's throat, down his shoulder, to his firm chest, and then to his abs. Liam bit his earlobe gently. Why'd you stop? He murmured. Caleb replied awkwardly that he felt it might not be appropriate. Liam let out a low chuckle. I've known you were a pervert for a long time, he said. Caleb looked at him, confused. Liam explained that during their second week as roommates, Caleb had sleepwalked, climbed into his bed, and started touching and kissing him. You're lying, Caleb said, his ears turning red. That was impossible. They barely knew each other then. If it really happened, why hadn't Liam stopped him? Liam was silent for a moment. Just as Caleb thought he had caught him in a lie, Liam held his face and said, because you were exactly my type. Before Caleb could process the idea that it was love at first sight for the stoic Liam, he was being kissed again. After they had cleared the air, Liam started bringing up old grievances. While his hands were busy, he asked, are you going to hire hosts again in the future? Lying on the bed, tears in his eyes, Caleb swore he would turn over a new leaf and be a good person from now on. Liam's hand came to rest on the back of his neck, a gesture of control. He pressed down again, saying he was going to teach Caleb a lesson tonight. Caleb thought to himself that this was a strange way for a good person to teach someone a lesson. The night was chaotic. He cursed Liam endlessly. Liam let him, never talking back, only responding with his hands. When Caleb opened his eyes, the room was dim. Liam was sitting next to him, playing a game on his phone. Caleb touched the corner of his mouth and found it was wet. It must have been how he was sleeping. He quickly wiped it away. Liam's cool voice commented that he had already seen it. Caleb just said, oh, explaining awkwardly that it was an accident. Liam paused his game for a second and said, He was being surprisingly agreeable. Caleb looked at him suspiciously, asking if he was sure he wasn't just cursing him out in his head. Liam sighed, turned, and looked at him seriously. I've seen you drool in your sleep many times back when we lived together. Caleb grabbed his phone. It was already 2 in the afternoon. Sam had messaged him at 10 that morning, complaining that Caleb had just dumped him on the bed and left him to die of thirst. Caleb, guilty because he'd been distracted by a handsome man, just sent back an emoji. Liam seemed to have finished his game. He nudged Caleb's arm and asked if he wanted to play. Caleb saw it was the same online game and immediately logged in, locking in a support hero that attached to another player. With Liam playing his famously skilled marksman, they were unstoppable. As he hung onto Liam's character, Caleb's mind started to wander again. He was naked, his body sore all over, while Liam was dressed in a t-shirt, looking perfectly put together. He turned to look at him. Liam was leaning against the headboard, a distinct bite mark visible on his throat. Liam glanced at him and asked what was wrong. Caleb felt a little shy. What are we now? He asked. Liam raised an eyebrow. What do you think? Caleb closed his eyes. Boyfriends or a sugar baby arrangement? Pick one. Liam was silent for a moment, then let out a cold laugh. He quickly ended the game and pressed Caleb's shoulders down. What did you say? Caleb feigned calmness. It's a multiple-choice question. Liam squeezed his cheeks hard. I choose the first one. Caleb hummed in satisfaction. Any smart person would choose the first one. With their relationship confirmed, Caleb moved back into the dorm. A few days later, his mother finally sent his allowance, $50,000. With the money, he bought Liam a load of new clothes and daily necessities. When Liam got back from class, he found Caleb on the floor, surrounded by packages. He sat down and ruffled Caleb's hair, asking why he bought so much. Caleb looked up at him earnestly and said it was all for him. A smile played on Liam's lips. That good to me? He asked. Caleb nodded emphatically. He patted Liam's head. Are there any childhood regrets you have? He asked. Liam looked confused. Caleb explained that since Liam's family wasn't well off, he must have missed out on a lot of good food and fun things. He puffed out his chest and said Liam could leave it all to him from now on. He would raise him like a son. Liam's smile twitched violently. I think you might have a misunderstanding about me. Caleb looked at him blankly. What misunderstanding could there be? Liam thought for a moment and said, I'll take you to my home during summer break. Caleb's department finished the semester a week before Liam's. He spent a week at his own home before heading out with Liam. It was true that Liam lived in a remote, rural area. And it was true that they raised pigs, sheep, and cattle. It was just that the sheer number of them was not what Caleb had imagined. Liam even handed over his bank card. Caleb looked at the balance and suddenly felt his own $30,000 compensation payment was rather pathetic. He was silent for a while. Liam was sitting on the grass, petting a small lamb. What's wrong? He asked. The 5 o'clock sun was gentle, casting a golden light over the rolling green hills. Caleb sighed. Liam, it looks like I'm the one who married up. Liam just hummed in agreement, his handsome, sharp features unchanged by the revelation. It seemed Caleb thought that he was the one who was marrying up after all.